In this exercise, we're going to do selection sort with test and timing in Ruby. Okay, so let's make a directory for our work here, appropriately named. Let's go into that directory. Okay, so let's first of all, by touch, just create a spec file, and let's create a application file to go along with it. Alright, so here's our spec file. We're going to say, we're just going to get it running basically initially. So I'll just do enough to do that. Give myself a couple of panels here with my editor. And I can go back in here and look at my spec. I'm going to include, in other words, the application code itself with require relative in Ruby. And now I'm going to run the spec, and it's going to say passed, and puts out spec, as you saw there. So now let's do some real code. Let's say we have an array with 9 numbers here, and we're actually going to use the system sort. No need to kid ourselves, doesn't exist, to say what that should look like. So we'll get the 1s, the 3s, the 1, 3, the 4, a couple of 5s. Missed a comma, then we get the format of these right, and a comma between the 5s. So that looks pretty much right, but there's a 10 at the end intentionally because I wanted to fail just to make sure I'm not getting a false positive. Now let's really test it. Okay, it passes. That's good. So that's what a system-based sort does. So now we're going to do a similar thing for our manually created sort for this exercise, single quotes. And we're going to set our source. We're actually going to steal from here, copy and paste is good in this case. So that's going to be, and very similar code. We actually want the code to look pretty similar. We want sort versus selection sort. So let's try running that, and as usual I've forgotten my end here, so let's add that in. That should be good. Save that and run that. Okay, so the method doesn't exist. So let's create a panel now. It's getting a little crowded here, but I'll fix that in a second. So here's my actual application code. And because I wanted to look the same, what I actually ended up doing was opening up the array class, which you can do in Ruby. You can reopen an existing class with open closed. So I know that my routine is to go through 2 loops, an outer loop, which goes through all the elements, so from the beginning to the end, and an inner loop, which goes from the outer loop also to the end. So that's my inner loop. So I've got those 2 loops there, and then for each comparison, I say if I wanted ordered low to high, so if I say it's effectively out of order, then I'm going to do my little swap routine here. So I'm going to save a value before I override it, and switch it with the inner one. Actually, this one does need to be the outer one. That's what I'm overriding, and then I'm setting this to what I had saved before I overrode it. So if it's out of order, it's now in order, and I want to do that for all of them. So basically the 2 loops, the outer and the inner loops. And that looks pretty good. Let's run that. Undefined method, each for integer. This is one of the interesting cases where I actually do want to have parens for clarity, so let's put them around there. Okay, that's good. So that should fix that error. And now I get comparison of integer with nil. And here I'm dealing with an array and an index, and size is off by 1. So I want to fix these sizes here. So I want to subtract 1 from those. So let's fix that, and that's good. It's returning an array. It usually tells me a quite common thing that I'm not remembering to return at the end of the method the value, and there it is. In this case it's array because that's the class I've opened up. So there it is. The modified array, my selection sort array, now works successfully against the compared to the system one. Now I'm going to put a benchmark, if I can spell it correctly, around this code because I'm interested in how long it takes to run. how long my code's taken to run compared to the system one. I have to do a little bit of changing of the code here because I don't want to actually test RSpec or the expectation, and I want to do the same here. I want to separate out getting that result, and I want to put the same benchmark around this. I know that these things will go very fast, so I'm going to put a loop 5,000 times, indent that correctly. Okay, and I'm going to want to do the same thing here, the same code here, spell it correctly. And looks pretty good. Something's, oh yeah, missing the end brace. I think that's it. Something's not quite right. Need a little bit more space here. Yeah, they couldn't find benchmarks. They didn't include the system library, but just a regular require. So that fixed that, and it's not actually report, it's measure. There's the method there, so let's do that. It's pretty close. Let's see what we got here. We've still got an error. Result. Because I was using it within the block, and it was scoped to the block. So if I can just fix that by declaring it before. Same here. It should fix that. Although I did it a little bit quickly and missed the fact that I didn't actually put the outside of the block. Okay, there we go. So there's my two timings. They're a bit hard to read, and I can fix that pretty well by putting in something called preprint in Ruby and change P to PP. Okay, so run that, and still hard to see which is which, so let's just put in a little put statement there with a dashed line. Move this up a little bit. So now we can compare the system one and R1. R1 is like 10 times as slow, but I'm sure the system one will be in C, and that's to be expected. Also, we might want to up the number of iterations a little bit to 50,000 to get a bit more comparison of how efficient it is for a large number of of runs. So now it's actually a little bit closer, but still the system one beats it out. And that's the exercise. Thank you.